In today's world of market volatility and uncertainty, your retirement plans need to be front and center. With ever-changing tax laws, healthcare worries, and an unpredictable stock market, don't overlook the vulnerability in your retirement planning. Protecting your family and estate will be difficult with shifting policies in Washington. It's more important than ever to keep an eye on retirement.
Hi, and welcome into Eye on Retirement, the weekly show that keeps you in the know about all things retirement. I'm your host and financial advisor, Rick Everett, along with the full complement of panelists for this episode, to include financial advisor with Market Advisory Group, Jonathon McCoy. From Market Tax Services, a tax specialist with that firm, Susan Curtis. Market Medicare Advisors, represented by advisor Cory Hiebert. And with Eidelman Law Firm, our estate planning attorney, Gerald Eidelman. Welcome in, everyone. Jonathon, you were sharing with me about a couple, Steve and Tammy, who were used to living and having money when they needed it, as the husband had been a highly compensated employee, and they traveled extensively through work. Living on a budget just wasn't anything that they were used to doing. Mm-hmm. And what prompted them to seek the help of the Market Advisory Group team?
Well, interestingly enough, I found out after the fact that Steve had sort of been in the market for a new financial advisor for a while. A little over a year and a half, 2 years ago, he started to get the idea from his employer that they might be cutting down his position at this company. And he was concerned that, this retirement was coming at him sort of fast and heavy, and he wasn't 100% prepared, even with the help of his financial advisor, especially in regard to the tax issues that could be coming his way. And what triggered him to start worrying about the tax issues and preparing for retirement was having seen some of his cohorts at work go through the same process, and essentially many of them were sort of being steamrolled by the IRS because of the deferred compensation plans, the stock option plans, and other things that were sort of out of their control in terms of what the company was pushing their way in taxable income. And the biggest issue that he found was they just seemed unprepared for it. They were being surprised by these large tax bills after the fact. He didn't want to find himself back in that same situation a lot of his former coworkers had gone through. And he'd even talked to them and after their retirement and said, was there anything that you could do or anything your financial advisors were helping you do? And they kept telling him, well, my financial advisors were telling me to go talk to a tax advisor, go talk to a tax advisor. So they sought the help of a tax advisor, but the tax advisors weren't talking to their financial advisors. And Steve was finding that he was in a very similar circumstance where his financial advisor currently had referred him out to a CPA firm. He had contacted that CPA firm, and they basically kept telling him, we'll get back with you, we'll get back with you, we'll get back with you. And now he's 4 to 6 months out from this potential early retirement that was somewhat unexpected and somewhat involuntary. And he was really just daunted by the idea that he didn't want to be hit by these surprise taxes that his former coworkers were hit with. On top of that, you'd mentioned, sort of the lifestyle that they'd been living with his current employer, not really having to worry about where the money's coming from on a monthly basis. There are people in that situation where you start looking at, okay, between my Social Security or a pension, I know generally what my income's going to be, but it maybe is a lot less than what I'm used to living on from my paycheck. He didn't know how much of their expected lifestyle they were going to have to cut out in retirement, or if they were even going to be able to live the life that they wanted. So just this overwhelming, daunting aspect of retirement planning that he felt like virtually none of it had been addressed outside of here's how your money is being invested.
So a lot to unpack here.
Mm-hmm.
How did you begin in the building process of putting together a plan for him?
Well, fortunately to our benefit, Susan in the Market Tax Services team was involved early on and was able to give us guidance on what information we need to look into and what we needed to contact his current employer on in terms of how these different stock option plans and buybacks and deferred compensation plans were going to be paid out and or rolled over, and start to help him understand what the tax implications of each of those transactions was going to be. Essentially, for the first 5 years of his retirement, they were going to be paying him money that he had to take it whether he needed it or not. And that turned out to be sort of the underlying issue with some of his former coworkers, that they just weren't prepared for that. They didn't know how those systems were going to work. So our initial process was understand how each of these accounts, how each of these payouts were actually going to work. What did he have control over and what did he not have control over? And this is really where Susan and the tax team stepped in to help us understand, okay, now we know generally what this taxable income flow is going to look like, at least for the next few years, and we can start to customize how the rest of the finances are handled.
So Susan, with Market Tax Services, it sounds like you had your work cut out for you in this case. What was your focus in helping Steve and Tammy through their planning with Jonathan and the advisory team?
Well, we see these things a lot with our clients, and it's very important to sit down and go over things and look at the projections and make the contacts that need to be contacted, and then really start picking away at the pieces and looking at the different tax implications and how it's going to affect him in these next, so many years without it being a surprise to him.
It's a very detailed process. And all of this before a plan is put in place for Steve and Tammy. Is this typical, Susan, when someone comes to explore their options with Market Advisory Group?
Well, the expectation that we like to set is to have the various members of our team involved. That way we can give everybody a complete understanding of what's going on. Because a lot of people don't meet with their financial advisors, and so they don't have an understanding of tax implications and what's going to happen. So, what's really important with our group is that we have members on the entire team that can help with that.
Jonathan, it comes as no surprise to me, having sat on the same side of the conference table as you do.
Right.
A lot of times when it comes time for people to investigate their retirement plans that they've been investing in and with through an employer, it comes as a surprise as to how that money actually has to be taken.
Right. And quite frequently, especially in Steve's case, it was a combination of 401ks, IRAs, money that's been managed by his financial advisor, but then also money that he hasn't had access to or control over up until this point when he has to start contemplating retirement. And to Susan and the tax team's credit, there was a lot that we were able to learn on how this plan was going to work, because they know the questions to be asking as tax advisors that a lot of times financial advisors just are not equipped to be asking of the HR department or of the existing employer. That we're looking for as much direction from our tax plan as our client, or from our tax advisors as our clients are. And this is where what Susan was getting at is, without that team approach, having all of those professionals around the same conference table at the same time, there's really not a great way to get a sense of direction on anything other than, well, here's how we can help you invest this money after you retire. That covers such a small portion of the retirement planning pie that getting a tax advisor involved has become an absolutely crucial part of the process with us.
And on down the road, viewers are going to see how getting the Medicare team and the estate planning team involved as well all come together to make the complete picture happen.
All of those areas of specialty are crucial to our clients. It's not just about the investment management anymore.
When it comes to retirement planning, you don't know what you don't know. But sometimes when you're confronted with a specific problem, that can jolt you into action to seek solutions. Steve and Tammy's fear of redundancy and not getting questions that they needed answered pushed them to find the answers before it was too late. They didn't want to go to multiple locations with multiple different companies for the help they needed. With Market Advisory Group, we're all under one roof, and that's for your convenience. If you'd like to set up a complimentary, no-obligation consultation with our team, operators are standing by right now to take your call at 316-252-8707. And be sure and check out our website at ionretirement.com. We'll be back with more on Steve and Tammy's story right after this.
Out on the water, there is a moment. Perfect synchronization. The team working together in harmony to reach their goal. Now, imagine finding a team of financial professionals to help run your course down the river of retirement. Market Advisory Group is that team. Financial advisors, tax professionals, estate planning attorneys, and Medicare advisors, all in the same boat. If you don't have a team like this in one place, it can become a hassle to relay information between them. When you come to Market Advisory Group, we bring everyone together for you. To get you answers in real time. To help make sure you don't miss something that puts your unique plan off course. You shouldn't be the one doing all the work to keep your retirement on pace. You should have a team in the boat with you. Your voice telling them where you're at, where you'd like to end up, and how you want to get there. And at that point, everyone falls into sync, all pulling in the same direction, toward the same purpose. Your retirement's financial security. We are Market Advisory Group, proud sponsor of Shocker Rowing.
Hi, and welcome back in. Jonathon McCoy with Market Advisory Group. In the prior segment, we were talking about Steve and Tammy, and we covered the concern of unexpected taxes that could be coming their way due to an unexpectedly early retirement for Steve. What other aspect of their retirement plan were you able to address with them?
Yeah, so we talk about the team approach all the time, right? It's not just the investment management, not just the tax management, but also the health insurance and then long-term the estate planning needs. And a lot of that goes back to our training as advisors to know which questions to be asking, because we find a lot of times folks come to meet with us for the first time. None of us know what we don't know, and it's hard to come up with those questions right at hand. So we've got a system and a process to follow. When we started getting into the health insurance aspects of Steve's retirement, we were looking at, okay, he's 64 years old, not going to be turning 65 until a little over a year from now, but his retirement's going to be within just the next few months. So what health insurance needs is he going to have, and he and his wife, Tammy in this case, are they going to have between now and reaching age 65? And Steve had sort of explored what a lot of people know about, which is the COBRA insurance coverage to extend his current insurance through work. Not huge fans of what that was going to cost in terms of from a budgeting standpoint, but they knew it was an option. And once we started sensing that there was some uncertainty in that health insurance planning process, we immediately reached out to Cory and the Market Medicare Advisors team to make sure that we are exploring all of their options, both for Steve and Tammy. There's a little bit of an age discrepancy there, but we know at least for Steve, we've got to get him through another year without health insurance potentially from work before he's eligible for Medicare. So exploring that entire process is why we get into our questioning with the Medicare team to begin with.
Trying to take a shot at the unknown is always tricky business, but it's good to have that contingency plan in place. Cory Hiebert, Market Medicare Advisors, where do you start when addressing health insurance and Medicare for Steve and Tammy, considering that he may not quite make 65 on his coverage at work?
Yeah, Rick, and the biggest word that you said there was the unknown. We're so used to having that coverage from our employer whenever we fear that that could be lost. Where we start is just going over what options we have. So for Steve in this case, we're uncertain of when that work is exactly going to stop. But we know when it does, the two options, or the most prominent options that he's going to have, is looking at either COBRA or an Affordable Care Act plan. And depending on when his work stops, that can drastically affect which one of those we decide to go with. As Jonathon had hinted at earlier, COBRA is not fun to pay. Anybody that's had COBRA before knows that can be a very expensive form of insurance.
And it's almost kind of deceiving in a person's mind, because you think, well, I'm just continuing my coverage that I had under my employer, so certainly the premium should be the same. Doesn't quite work that way.
Yeah, your employer quits paying their part of the premium, and now you're stuck with that entire cost of that plan. So the very important thing, whenever I sat down with Steve, that we had to go over was, whenever we talk about the Affordable Care Act, policies available to you and premiums that you're going to pay are completely based on your projections of your income, or what you think you're going to earn throughout a year. So whenever we sat down and I was talking with Steve, we came to the conclusion that if he were to cease work this year, it's going to make the most sense, at least through the end of the year, to go with COBRA coverage. Because Steve had already had so much earned income that whenever we looked at Affordable Care Act policies, he's going to pay almost an equal premium to what he would pay with COBRA, and the coverage wasn't going to be as great as the COBRA coverage he was being offered. Now, if Steve makes it into next year, and then he loses his source of income, that completely changes things with the Affordable Care Act. Because now all of that salary that he's used to expecting and that taxable income is gone. It opens up a brand new world of ACA policies that he has available to him.
So once you were able to assist and help them with the pre-Medicare needs were met, what are the next steps when they're ready to go on Medicare?
Yeah, so for Steve, the most important thing that I do for anybody in my office is setting up a timeline. Whenever we talk about Medicare, there are very important dates that we have to meet in order to make sure that we get coverage started on time and we're not facing any late enrollment penalties. So once we decide that Steve's either going to be going with that COBRA coverage or that Affordable Care Act coverage, and we start that Medicare planning, the important figure that I wanted Steve to keep in his head was 3 months before he turned 65. Your application into Medicare using what's known as your initial enrollment period is a 7-month window that surrounds your 65th birth month. So as much as I'd love to start Medicare planning for Steve this year in 2023, it's not very effective for him because Medicare goes through massive changes on an annual basis. So any planning we do today may not be valuable for what we look at in 2024. So we decided to just put a pause on the Medicare conversation until we get to that 3-month deadline.
It makes it hard to hit a moving target, especially when Uncle Sam is involved.
Absolutely.
In fact, whenever the government is involved, things can become hard to figure out and overcomplicated incredibly fast. Steve and Tammy found out that to be true when it came to Medicare. But the same goes for tax considerations and for what happens to your estate when that time comes. It helps to have specialists that are dedicated to these areas in the room with you as you're seeking the best solutions. And at Market Advisory Group, we have the specialists all under the same roof for your convenience. If you'd like to set up a complimentary no-obligation consultation, give us a call. Operators are standing by right now at 316-252-8707. And check out our website. It's at ionretirement.com. We'll be back with the final segment and finish up about Steve and Tammy and do that right after this.
How confident are you in your current financial plan? Do you know with certainty how the recent market volatility will affect your future hopes and dreams? How much are you paying in taxes? And how much are you losing to unnecessary high fees? You didn't work to save this money so that you could spend your time worried in retirement. Now is the time to take charge of your finances so you can feel confident about your future. Call in during the next 30 minutes of today's show only to set up an absolutely complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review that will result in your own customized written plan. We'll start with a full-blown analysis of what you already have. By running a report to untangle how much you are currently paying in fees, how you're allocated for risk, and what it's costing to work with your current advisor. Next, we'll identify your goals. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Where do you want to go, and who do you hope to go there with? Is your current financial plan set up to get you there without mishap? Let's design a roadmap to create a financial plan you can follow with confidence. Get the piece that so many people are missing from their retirement. Find out how having a written plan can make a difference to your retirement dreams. Call now to schedule your complimentary, no-obligation, full-blown financial review today.
Welcome back into the final segment of the show. We've been discussing the beneficial impact that the team at Market Advisory Group had for Steve and Tammy in helping them prepare for a surprise early retirement. The Market Tax Services team helped them to get a clearer picture of the tax implications of various retirement payouts coming Steve's way. And the Market Medicare Advisors team guided them through their health insurance choices and timeline for getting set up with Medicare while helping them to make decisions on the right plans for them. Jonathan, we also are needing to discuss other things as far as it pertains to estate planning for this couple.
Yeah, that's correct. And the unique case of Steve and Tammy was they had no children, they had no obvious heirs in their situation, but they had set up some power of attorney documents in case one of them becomes incapacitated. They can handle each other's finances and medical decisions, and those power of attorney documents were maybe a little outdated. It had been 8 to 10 years since the last time they had reviewed those. But they'd also set up a basic will for each other so that they had a little more specific dictation there in terms of how their personal belongings should be handled if something happened to both of them. Because as we mentioned, their lifestyle to this point, the main reason they had these documents was they traveled a lot of international work for Steve's job. And that may be toning down just a little bit, but ultimately with this onslaught of additional retirement assets that Steve's going to be dealing with upon retirement, we found it necessary to set up a consultation, which is actually still coming up with Steve and Tammy. But in the interim, we've given Gerald and his team at Eidelman Law Firm a chance to review their existing estate planning documents just to see, is what they have in place already sufficient, insufficient, outdated, updated, what needs to be done, what needs to be changed. And we handed over to Gerald and his staff to make sure that we are prepared with the appropriate questions, but also prepared with the appropriate recommendations based on what their situation is.
Gerald Eidelman with Eidelman Law Firm. When someone comes to you and they have existing documents but aren't sure what else they need or perhaps how changing laws may affect their estate plan, where do you start?
Well, obviously the first thing I do is I have to review the documents. But that's looking at it's looking at it in a vacuum. I need to know about their current circumstances. I need to know about their goals, and to make sure that those plans they have in place will meet those goals. That usually requires a meeting, requires me delving into their lives. That's why I always say I see people doing things online, and part of the problem is that in responding to AI or whatever system is being used to create these documents, there's a limit to what they can ask and what they can figure out. I run all the time into people who, I start talking to them and all of a sudden, oh, I have this. Oh, no, I need this. Or things that I wouldn't have found out had I not engaged in a long conversation with them. That they weren't yes or no answers, but that it needed to be a lot more reflection as far as to what the plan would be to accomplish those goals.
So in this case, it's a pending meeting. We'll have to wait and see what those documents tell you and what advice you have for them. But for anyone wondering if they even need an estate plan, what are your recommendations?
Well, the first thing I tell people is that if you don't have a estate plan, the state has a estate plan for you. And that estate plan may not be what you want. For example, in the case of the couple that we're talking about, that let's say they both had passed away without an estate plan. Well, all of their assets, since they have no children, would pass to the nearest of kin. None of their interest in leaving some money to charity or other things like that, or nieces and nephews, that completely gets wiped out. Or if you are have a couple with children and one of the spouses dies, their assets don't go to the surviving spouse. The assets go to the surviving spouse and the children. So that's the estate plan the state has for you. So you want to make sure that you plan a estate that represents what you want to accomplish. What are your goals? What are your interests in it? A big thing, people leave, when you have no children, you wind up leaving it to different family members. And we need to address those members because they may not be in the order of succession that the state has.
A lot of times I'll meet with people and they say, yeah, I have a will. It was done in 1999. Your quick words on that.
Well, wills are evolving. Everybody's life changes over a period of time. 20 years is quite a long time. I'm sure there were several changes. Maybe the executor of the will passed away. All of these things have to be updated on a regular basis. I tell people to review things within 3 to 5 years just to make sure everything is on place.
Thank you, Gerald. You know, we started with Steve and Tammy not knowing if they'd be prepared for the tax and healthcare issues approaching them with Steve's early retirement. Now we've covered how the entire team got involved to address their income needs and investment objectives. Most importantly for Steve's concern, how they could manage the transition to retirement in a tax-effective manner. If you feel compelled to look into what your retirement plan could be missing in these areas of tax management, Medicare planning, estate planning, as well as investment management, reach out to us now at 316-252-8707. That's all the time we have this week. I'm Rick Everett, along with the entire team, reminding you we're here to keep an eye on retirement.
All client names have been changed to protect their identities. Investment advisory services are offered through Foundations Investment Advisors LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The content provided is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The views, statements, and opinions expressed herein are those of the individual speakers and not necessarily those of Foundations and its affiliates. The information contained herein does not constitute an offer to sell any securities or represent an express or implied opinion or endorsement of any specific investment opportunity, offering, or issuer. Any discussion of performance or returns are not indicative of future results. Each individual investor situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Foundations only transacts business in the states where it is registered or excluded or exempt from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by security regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. No legal or tax advice is provided. Always consult with a tax professional. Legal services are offered by Eidelman Law Firm. Tax services offered by Market Tax Services. Market Advisory Group does not provide legal or tax advice. Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not in any way refer to investment advisory products. Rates and guarantees provided by insurance products and annuities are subject to the financial strength of the issuing insurance company, not guaranteed by any bank or the FDIC. The guest commentators featured in this show are not investment advisor representatives of Foundations and do not provide advisory services. Market Advisory Group does have several investment advisor representatives that can provide such services. This is not endorsed or affiliated with any U.S. government agency, the Social Security Administration, or associated with any federal Medicare program. We do not offer every plan available in your area. Any information we provide is limited to those plans we do offer in your area. Please contact Medicare.gov or 1-800-MEDICARE to get information on all of your options. A Roth conversion may not be suitable for your situation. The primary goal in converting retirement assets into a Roth IRA is to reduce the future tax liability on the distributions you take in retirement or on the distributions of your beneficiaries. The information provided is to help you determine whether or not a Roth IRA conversion may be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Please review your retirement savings, tax, and legacy planning strategies with your legal/tax advisor to be sure a Roth IRA conversion fits into your planning strategies. All rights reserved.